IOM, the General Overseas Service of All India Radio, presents readings from an autobiography or the story of my experiments with truth. The reading from the autobiography is presented by Sri Gopalakrishna Gandhi, writer, teacher, and the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The words of the Mahatma in the voice of his grandson.
The train reached Maritzburg, the capital of Natal, at about 9 p.m. Beddings used to be provided at this station. A railway servant came and asked me if I wanted one. No, said I have one with me. He went away. But a passenger came next and looked me up and down. He saw that I was a coloured man. This disturbed him. Out he went and came in again with one or two officials. They all kept quiet. Then another official came to me and said, "Come along, you must go to the van compartment." "But I have a first-class ticket." "That doesn't matter," rejoined the other. "I tell you, you must go to the van compartment." I tell you, I was permitted to travel in this compartment at Durban, and I insist on going on with it. "No, you won't," said the official. "You must leave this compartment, or else I shall have to call a police constable to push you out." "Yes, you may." I refused to get out voluntarily. The constable came. He took me by the hand and pushed me out. My luggage was also taken out. I refused to go to the other compartment, and the train steamed away. I went and sat in the waiting room, keeping my handbag with me and leaving the other luggage where it was. It was winter, and winter in the higher regions of South Africa is severely cold. Maritzburg being at a high altitude, the cold was extremely bitter. My overcoat was in my luggage, but I did not dare to ask for it, lest I should be insulted again. So I sat and shivered. There was no light in the room. A passenger came in at about midnight and possibly wanted to talk to me, but I was in no mood to talk. I began to think of my duty. Should I fight for my rights or go back to India? Or should I go on to Pretoria without minding the insults and return to India after finishing the case? It would be cowardice to run back to India without fulfilling my obligation. The hardship to which I was subjected was superficial, only a symptom of the deep disease of colour prejudice. I should try, if possible, to root out the disease and suffer hardships in the process. Redress for wrongs I should seek only to the extent that would be necessary for the removal of the colour prejudice. So I decided to take the next available train to Pretoria. The train reached Charlestown in the morning. There was no railway in those days between Charlestown and Johannesburg, but only a stagecoach which halted at Standerton for the night en route. I possessed a ticket for the coach. As I was regarded as a coolie and looked a stranger, it would be proper, thought the leader, as the white man in charge of the coach was called, not to seat me with the white passengers. There were seats on either side of the coach box. The leader sat on one of these as a rule. Today, he sat inside and gave me his seat. I knew it was sheer injustice and an insult, but I thought it better to pocket it. So, much as I fretted within myself, I prudently sat next to the coachman. At about 3 o'clock, the coach reached Pardikoff. Now the leader desired to sit where I was seated, as he wanted to smoke and possibly to have some fresh air. So he took a piece of dirty sackcloth from the driver, spread it on the footboard, and addressing me said, "Sami, you sit on this. I want to sit near the driver." The insult was more than I could bear. In fear and trembling, I said to him, "It was you who seated me here, though I should have been accommodated inside. I put up with the insult. Now that you want to sit outside and smoke, you would have me sit at your feet. I shall not do so." As I was struggling through these sentences, The man came down upon me and began heavily to box my ears. He seized me by the arm and tried to drag me down. I clung to the brass rails of the coach box and was determined to keep my hold even at the risk of breaking my wrist bones. The passengers were witnessing the scene. The man swearing at me, dragging and belaboring me, and I remaining still. He was strong and I was weak. Some of the passengers were moved to pity and exclaimed, "Man, let him alone, don't beat him." "No fear," cried the man, but he seemed somewhat crestfallen and stopped beating me. He let go my arm, swore at me a little more, and asking the Hottentot servant who was sitting on the other side of the coach box to sit on the footboard, took the seat so vacated. I reached Johannesburg quite safely that night. I asked the cabman to drive to Muhammad Qasim Kamaruddin's shop. Here I found Abdul Ghani Sheikh expecting me, and he gave me a cordial greeting. He had a hearty laugh over the story of my experiences. "However did you expect to be admitted to a hotel?" he asked. "Why not?" I asked. "You will come to know after you have stayed here for a few days. Only we can live in a land like this because for making money we do not mind pocketing insults, and here we are." With this, he narrated to me the story of the hardships of Indians in South Africa. He said, "This country is not for men like you. Look now, you have to go to Pretoria tomorrow. You will have to travel third class." Sheikh Abdul Ghani had come to see me off at the station. I took my seat in a first class compartment and the train started. At Germiston, the guard came to examine the tickets. He was angry to find me there and signaled to me with his finger to go to the third class. I showed him my first class ticket. "That doesn't matter," said he. "Remove to the third class." There was only one English passenger in the compartment. He took the guard to task. "What do you mean by troubling the gentleman?" he said. "Don't you see he has a first class ticket? I do not mind in the least his travelling with me." Addressing me, he said, "You should make yourself comfortable where you are." The guard muttered, "If you want to travel with a coolie, what do I care?" and went away. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, the train reached Pretoria. Next morning, I called on the attorney, Mr. A.W. Baker. Abdullah Sheikh had given me some description of him, so his cordial reception did not surprise me. He received me very warmly and made kind inquiries. I explained all about myself. During the very first interview, Mr. Baker ascertained my religious views. I said to him, "I am a Hindu by birth, and yet I do not know much about Hinduism, and I know less of other religions. In fact, I do not know where I am and what is and what should be my belief. I intend to make a careful study of my own religion and as far as I can of other religions as well." Mr. Baker was glad to hear all this and said, "I have built a church at my own expense and deliver sermons in it regularly. I am free from color prejudice. We meet at 1 o'clock every day for a few minutes and pray for peace and light. I shall be glad if you will join us there. So I shall expect you here tomorrow at 1 o'clock and we shall go together to pray," added Mr. Baker as we said goodbye. I had little time for reflection just yet. It was now dark. I went to my room and lay there absorbed in deep thought. What, I thought, can be the meaning of Mr. Baker's interest in me? What shall I gain from his religious co-workers? How far should I undertake the study of Christianity? How was I to obtain literature about Hinduism? And how was I to understand Christianity in its proper perspective without thoroughly knowing my own religion? I could come to only one conclusion. I should make a dispassionate study of all that came to me and deal with Mr. Baker's group as God might guide me. I should not think of embracing another religion before I had fully understood my own.
You just heard the reading from the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, presented by Sri Gopala Krishna Gandhi, the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.